for all to see, the signs we've lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains and turn our hearts away, like a silent choir, too scared to sing the anthem of a braver day. The Ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.
The Ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix. That just doesn't get old at all, unlike us.
Here we go again.
Well, you a little bit more than me, but anyway.
Strike.
Oh, I know. Shows by the length of your beard, brother. Shows by the length of your beard. Yep, and he could do 2025 was there early. Nice. You're singing the theme song. Good on you. G'day. Good to see you. I'll wait for a few more to come through, Bruce, and wait to see whether all the technical stuff works. The X's and the two rumbles and the YouTubers. We've had a few more people jumping on the YouTube as well, which is good to see. Even though it's not obviously the preferred platform, but at least it's getting out there.
Really? So we don't get auto cancelled by YouTube.
Haven't been lately. No, it does get out there. There hasn't been any episodes that have actually been flagged. I mean, they may not get the algorithm. G'day, Philip. How you going? Good to see you. Yeah, so I don't know, but anyway, it's getting out there, so that's all right. That's the main thing.
Yep, no worries.
For all the different platforms. So, but yeah, quite a bit of rain here in Adelaide, South Australia, where I am, down here in the south, and lots of rain and wind, and it's definitely a lot cooler. We can tell winter's on its way. Today it was definitely a big change in the weather.
Yeah, I actually know that because I did a quick dash over to SA for the weekend to do a shoot with a military rifle club, and I got a shoot in early, and then halfway through the morning at lower light they had to cancel it. It was all rainy and muddy, but I'd got mine done.
Yep. So there you go. G'day there, innocent bystander. Looks like the YouTubes are working. So there you go. How about that? Good to see. Good to see.
Great handle that.
Yeah, that is. That is a good handle. So what do you reckon? Should we get into it? I'm just going to do a cheeky recap and a plug. What? Yeah, we going? We're doing this.
We're
on it. Let's go. Anyway, just another cheeky little plug, Bruce, of Faith, Culture, Politics. My site. I've put 3 more articles up during the week. I haven't done many podcasts, Bruce, but I've put some articles together. I put them up on the FCP website. So for those who haven't yet, if you're at all interested in seeing what I'm putting together on my blog there, you can go to the connect there on fcpaustralia.com and hit the subscribe. You'll get my newsletter from there, so you can jump on there and do that if you do wish to follow along on the blogs. But I'll put a couple up there. Who Shapes a Child? A Christian Response to a Case Against Parenting. So we're going to talk into a little bit of that shortly. And Unequal Scales: The Power of Stewardship and Erosion of Australians. So that was Australian Trust. So that was in regards to the revolving door of politicians and where they lead to, Bruce, from political positions, bureaucratic positions, and then obviously the climate scenario reckoning from the ICCP advisors update. So anyway, that's on the website if people want to check it out. But this is, while you're talking, Bruce, I might chuck the link for the newsletter. You can view it online if you want to check out any of that. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, because it's saying here my browser has lost connection to your screen share audio. Okay, that's a bit weird. So luckily I'm not playing any audio. Hopefully that's just me and not you as well, Bruce. But anyway, this was the news, the newsletter, Who Shapes Our Children, Unequal Scales, the Autism Report from McCullough Foundation Research. Social media exposes a little YouTube link on there. So if people want, I'm going to chuck this in the comment section on all the platforms if people did want to jump on that newsletter and check it out. So as I said, the climate scenario reckoning, climate models, public fear and policy consequences, unequal scales, obviously the power, stewardship and erosion of Australian trust, talking about politicians jumping into, having favourable sort of positions post politics and so forth, and having the opportunity to jump onto projects that are also lined up with government and bureaucracy. So done that. And what shapes a child? I've been getting some PDFs, Bruce, these are about 10-year-old PDFs from academics writing literature about how parents aren't needed in society anymore, and that the state should should take in the role, or other organisations take on the role as parenting. So wrote quite a lengthy piece on that if people want to check that out. But this was a legal scholar, Samantha Goodwin's paper from 2015 against parental rights, published in Columbia Human Rights Law Review, and argues that parental authority is structurally incompatible with egalitarian commitments to equality and so forth. So it was a bit of a longer article I wrote, but I thought I'd start unpacking a bit of that. And then we have,
just scroll back to that egalitarian. Let me just read that again. Okay. Parental authority is structurally incompatible with egalitarian commitments to equality. I'm just going to state my position there. I'm not committed to equality. I'm committed to meritocracy. I want the best people to do the best things and get the biggest rewards. And I want my children to do the best and get the biggest rewards. And I don't want them to be equal to everyone else. I want them to be better.
Yeah. Yep. No, fair call on that. And this, I mean, I do talk into the idea of the roles of parents from a Christian perspective and a biblical view and a creative view, and how parents are actually ordained. It's a covenant responsibility ordained by God to be the best role models they can be based on their values and beliefs. So individual families bring their values and beliefs, and they bring their children up in that. It's not up to the state. It's not up to organisations like ACON and other organisations to do that, Bruce. So
ACON, did you say?
Yeah, ACON. Yes, Roger.
They're not even hiding it, Mark. They're just not hiding it.
They're not hiding it at all, Bruce. So, but anyway, so then there was a good article written by Kurt Malberg from the Daily Declaration in regards to the Queensland legal professional Jaden Beale has been fighting a human rights case before the Queensland Civil and Administrative Tribunal since 2022 after refusing the COVID-19 injection mandate on the grounds of his Christian faith. His conviction, grounded in 1 Corinthians 6:19-20, was that he must honour God with his body and not introduce substances developed using cells from aborted babies and other things. So the Queensland government's response has been extraordinary. In court filings, Crown Law argued that Beale's belief, grounded directly in scripture, does not qualify as protected religious belief under Australian law because it does not conform to a specific code of conduct required by a particular church. So they're pulling out all stops and wherever you go. So that was an article written by Kurt Malberg, and I've got the links to the articles there, and I'll put the link to my my newsletter there. And then obviously APRA under scrutiny, concerns are now coming inside the system. So this is another story that taps onto what I was talking about. There was an article written there as well. And then obviously a peer-reviewed paper on autism vaccines, Bruce. I highlighted that as well. So that's in the newsletter. And obviously we get a bit of a mention there, Bruce, from episode 108, and I'll put our little episode in there into the newsletter, talking about our little blurb and some of the things that we covered. So, very, I know I'm giving us a little bit of a plug here. So, but anyway, and Stephen Tripp, obviously he's the president of Australians for Better Government, did a good podcast on his Commanding the Narrative. Got that linked as well in regards to how to improve government, hopefully. But I mean, I think we're a long way away from that. Who knows? And then there was the little SBS episode that had there where they had a couple of migrants, Bruce, and a big audience about One Nation and what it means there. So it was quite interesting. There's a quick grab. There was one migrant, Neha, who migrated from India to Sydney as a 6-year-old. She remembered sitting in front of the television as a young child, watching Pauline Hanson's maiden speech and feeling frightened, wondering whether her family would have to leave Australia because some of the comments that Pauline made. But then Ranil went against the script of this SBS episode, and he said whose family came from Australia from Fiji 40 years ago. asked what he thinks of One Nation, he doesn't follow the expected script. He answers in warm, direct, and entirely his own, someone who loves her country so much that is not racist, talking about Pauline Hanson. He goes on to say his family came here to be Australian, that he flies the Australian flag in his front yard, and that protecting your country from values that conflict with it is not something he finds troubling at all. So good on Ron Hill from doing that. But yep, it's funny as the episode went on, the Neha ended up saying that she believes herself, despite of her childhood fears, ends up saying that something remarkable, that migrants and One Nation voters actually have a lot more in common than people realise, and that the anger people feel is really about being failed by governments and denied access to services they have paid for. So the government seems to...
and freedoms that they are intrinsically entitled to. And by the way, that's interesting, because you might not know, but the one of the core issues in the series of coups in Fiji starting in about 1980 was based around excessive immigration. Fiji also has a very large Indian population, and the coup led by Colonel Rambuka back in, I think, 1980 odd, was one of the core issues, is that Indigenous Fijians were watching their country slip away. So it's no surprise that somebody might leave that and then come here to Australia and go, hang on, I've seen this. I don't want this happening to my new country as well. And guess what the number one immigrant group in Australia is these days? It's Indian. I mean, like them or not, irrelevant. You know, if you want to live in India, go to India. Australia is not India. I don't want a little India in every town turning into every town as a little India.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, what Ronil was saying in his little comments there. But so yeah, I've got the links to that if people want to check it out. The social media ban was not. This was an interesting. This was a little 30-minute discussion from a guy. The social media ban, age ban. It was never about protecting your children. Now this is. I think it was quite interesting. That was the end of that. But I'm just gonna open that one, Bruce, because. And just show people, because it's an interesting one to jump on. It talked about, and it is a panel, it's called TechWin Cyber. I'm not sure if you can see that. This isn't the guy, this was an ad. I'll just let that play through, but it's from TechWin Cyber. It's only a short, breakdown of this, but this is him here. And it's a very, very interesting discussion about, who was actually behind the whole push for the social media ban. So, as I said, I'll put the links in the description of that, and people can check all that out themselves rather than me blurting on for too long, because I kind of want to get into the show and view. And this was really just a bit of a plug, for that newsletter, and people can check that out in their own time. As I said, I'll link it. And if you're not already following, then I just encourage you to, if you feel like you want to follow along on my blog and what I'm writing and what I'm sharing in my newsletters, by all means. Now, I've got some feedback about, and I do notice it a little bit. I've got a bit of chirping coming back, but I think it might be a bit of feedback from your laptop, because we were talking about audio before, and because you got the laptop speakers happening, I might be coming through a bit loud on your end, and it's feeding back through your speaker. So that's what I think is happening, because I've got the noise cancelling one on myself. So we'll see how we go. But anyway, the way to fix that, you'd be happy about, Bruce, is that I talk less.
And I'll just add to that. I'll just drop the volume on my end a bit. You might remember going back a few weeks ago, I was having vast troubles with getting to air at all due to one of those sort of background updates that Microsoft rapes your computer with, whether you like it or not. And I've also had trouble with mic since then. So I know I am on the laptop speakers and microphone at the moment. And I know that the sound quality is not very crisp, and I don't like it. And I've tried quite a few things to fix it. And my expensive mic that used to work, now it'll broadcast sound, but the speakers don't work. So yeah, we're not tech experts here. We're doing our best, and sorry, their quality is a bit down. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll try and keep my voice down so it doesn't, and limit my talking. So yeah.
Well, I've dropped my speaker volume on this end, so you might just get comments from people whether that's improved it.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll just go. We'll work through it. If it gets too bad, I'm pretty sure they'll tell us.
Yep.
Righto, that's me, brother. On to you. That was just a cheeky little plug. That's all.
Quick as that, eh?
Cheeky little plug from the Noigi.
Epi 109. Epi 109.
Yes,
so there's
109.
Contents list. We've got a Gulf War update and a biofuels update. Remember last week I talked about biofuels, and one of the things I said is that some analyses I've seen said you have to burn more dinosaur blood to make a litre of biodiesel than if you just pulled the dinosaur blood out of the ground. And yeah, I'll bring the receipts for this. I've downloaded and digested a report that says exactly that. A lot of health stuff this week, and health hasn't been particularly prominent lately, but one of the main stories here, I'm going to do a look at coenzyme Q. And that was a suggestion sent to me by a friend of the channel, Henley97.
She's a little gem. Chip on the
I found that actually pretty interesting. And in particular, coenzyme Q is an important molecule in your body for metabolic health and energy production and so forth. And guess what? Statins bugger it up. And that explains a lot of the side effects of statins. So I'm going to go over that. I got a story in the media where they're interviewing an expert, and you remember that, never trust an expert, but this expert is apparently working on an mRNA vaccine to prevent dementia, which does seem like rather a futile quest to me, given the likelihood that it causes it, but I'm going to look into that. And of course, whilst the world's been hantavirusing and Ebola virusing, Australia's been diphtheria-ing. So that current shock horror, rush out and get vax disease for us, that's the fashion for the new season. So we're going to look into that. What is diphtheria and what do the vaccines do, if they do anything? Because that gives us some useful illustrations of some of the limitations of other vaccines like the COVID vaccines.
Yep.
We have a diversity divide segment with a story that tells us 1/3 of the French population is now either an immigrant or descended in one or two generations from immigrant stock, 1/3 of them. And the story said that this was basically destroying the culture of France. So I'm going to have a look at that. Fair few things in the government overreach section. The ABC Melbourne 774 interviewed a public health expert who had a theoretical discussion on, well, why don't we just ban cigarette smoking? If ciggies are bad, why don't we just ban them? Now, in fairness, she wasn't advocating that. She was just mentally going through the implications of that, but that raised some interesting thoughts, I thought. More from the safety nannies is a suggestion from the Australian College of Road Safety that we should lower rural speed limits to 80 kilometres an hour to deal with the growing road safety crisis. Did you know we had a road safety crisis?
No.
Apparently, road tolls exploding, so they said that perhaps we should do that. And we're going to talk about Dr. Dennis Borsos from Colac, who you might remember fell foul of the authorities on day 3 of him issuing vaccine and mask exemptions in this little town of Colac. So the first day he had about 3 people turn up. The next day he had dozens. And the third day he had a mile of people waiting outside his surgery. And so the police descended on him. APRA got involved. He ended up suspended from then until now. And the medical board and APRA have since finalised the action against him, and he's now been struck off for another 5 years. So nearly 10 years penalty for him for acting ethically. So he's one of the very small number of ethical doctors in Australia, and all of them, of course, were extinguished because that's not what the government wants.
Exactly.
In miscellaneous, I'm going to briefly cover the expression flipping the bird, showing the middle finger, because I had a look into that, and the origin of it is much older than I thought. I thought it came from the 1800s or thereabouts, but in fact, it's much older. It's millennia old, from Greek and Roman times, so I'm going to discuss that. And finally, the Muslim section, I'm going to finish with yet another 2 climate change end stories. They just keep coming.
Right. Funny about that.
Funny about that.
They just keep on coming.
All right. So updates. First of all, a Gulf War update. So it's now day 84 of the 4-day war. And I really can just keep using last week's slide just by putting week 12 instead of week 11, because very little has happened through the week. So here's my summary. The phony war continues, so not much happening. The US is claiming daily or even hourly that a deal is imminent, and they should be announcing something within hours. You might remember they've been doing that for weeks, actually. Often timed to opening and closing of the stock markets, and often correlated with massive what are called longs or shorts. So a long is where you bet that the market will go up, and a short is where you bet that it'll go down. And funnily enough, some very large longs or shorts seem to be placed an hour or two before the Trump comes out and gives a piece of information that'll force the prices in the corresponding direction. Nevertheless, the strait remains closed, so Iran is still winning. The stock market and the oil market and our media and our politicians are still ignoring the risk. And same conclusion as always, we're in a lull at the moment, but it's not over. And if I could steal a phrase from Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, who runs an excellent, almost daily analysis of the going-ons. He's a former US Army officer who left the Army at Lieutenant Colonel level. As you know, we might have discussed this recently. Almost all the credible military sources on the goings-on in the Gulf are retired colonels. And the reason they're retired is because they were realists. They were like me. They told the truth to politicians and their superiors, which put a cap on their careers at about half colonel or colonel level. So they all exited the frame at that point, and the kiss-ass generals stayed in the system. So again, don't trust a doctor unless they're deregistered. Don't trust a military spokesman unless their career was cancelled at colonel level. So Daniel Davis has recently been saying that, we're at a critical point in the war, and despite all the, there's almost going to be a deal, just wait for another hour rhetoric that comes out. He says we're at a walk away or bombs away point. So Trump can either walk away with a massive strategic loss here, having gone backwards compared to when the war started, or he can start bombing again. They're your 2 options. I don't think Trump is your walk away type of guy. So I think it's only a matter of time until option 2 is chosen, which is the bombs away. So they restart the war, and that's going to have terrible consequences because there's already a lot of energy infrastructure damage in the Gulf. And if the war starts again, Iran said its gloves off this time, they're just going to blow up everything. So now, having said that, whilst I think it's likely that the war's going to start again rather than fizzle out or walk away, I think we've probably still got another week's grace. And the reason I think that is because it's the Hajj in Saudi Arabia at the moment. And for those of you who don't know, one of the key things you must do as a Muslim is go on a pilgrimage to Mecca at some stage in your life. It's a major event, and all Muslims are expected to do it if able. The Quran says if capable, if able. And this time of year, every year, literally tens of millions of pilgrims converge on Saudi Arabia for the Hajj in Mecca. Well, that started, I think, yesterday. And given that the Saudis are a key basing area for the American military, I don't think the Saudis are going to let anything disrupt the Hajj. The last thing they want during this signature event is to have missiles and bombs dropping. So I think we've probably got a week's grace here, regardless of what the media says or doesn't say.
Interesting how that works, isn't it?
Mm. Well, it's just one of those things. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that we won't see significant kinetic action for another week. So really not much changed in the Gulf War, although as always, that doesn't mean it's over.
Not over till the fat lady sings.
It's the phony war. And the phony war in World War II, at the start of it, I think went on for 6 or 9 months. War was declared and nothing much happened for 6 or 9 months. And after that, tens of millions of people were killed. So just because it went quiet doesn't mean nothing.
Well, the people behind it were sitting in their little rooms planning how many of the useless eaters they're going to kill in their little, attempt to enact their plans.
Well, if the Gulf closes as an industrial state permanently, either because the strait never reopens or because the war escalates to the point that the fertilizer plants and the energy plants and the helium plants, et cetera, if they all get destroyed, a third of the world's fertilizer comes out of the Gulf. That's amazing. I would not have known that beforehand. And of course, the Earth's population has gone from 2 to 8 billion in the last century. And it's done that on the back of industrial agriculture, which is powered by fertilizer and diesel. So, yeah, like I say, it is a big thing. So sort of that segues into this. So last week we were talking about calls in Australia for mandatory addition of sugar to our fuels. They want sugar in your food. They want it in your fuel as well now. And that related to ethanol production for addition to petrol and biodiesel. Growing using seed oils as feedstock for diesel. And I said at the time that not only was it a very bad idea to turn food land into fuel land, particularly in Australia when we're awash with hydrocarbon fuels that political reasons stop us using. But I did say that I didn't even think it was economic. It was just being done for political industry purposes. And I did indeed dig out the evidence for that. So this was from the US National Center for Energy Analytics 2026. And this is their report on biofuels. So here's what they said. They said in the US, 40% of corn production is used for bioethanol. Isn't that staggering? Nearly half the corn that's grown in the US is used to make additives to go into fuel.
Wow.
Nearly 40%. Nevertheless, even by doing that, they only reduce their national dinosaur blood burning, their geological diesel burning, by 7%. So half their corn land only makes a less than 10% reduction in the amount of hydrocarbon fuels that they need to use. Nevertheless, because they are growing this crop, they put vast amounts of fossil fuels on the input side. Hence, the tractor that we looked at. Those things don't run on ethanol. And if they did, it'd be worse because you're circling the drain in terms of you're producing less than you're actually inputting. But this report said that vast amounts of fossil fuels are being used to make these clean food fuels, and vast amounts of inputs go into that. It's not only diesel, it's fertilizer. And the reason a lot of fertilizer comes out of the Middle East because fertilizer is a very energy intensive product as well. So we are using vast amounts of dinosaur blood to grow this clean fuel. As a result, the CO2 emissions of doing it this way far exceed the emissions you get if you just drilled for it. And on top of that, there's the water input. And the water inputs are vast because growing plants requires water.
Mhm.
And the report said that it takes 1,000 gallons of water to make 1 gallon of ethanol. That's the E bit in E10. E10 is petrol with 10% ethanol in it. That's the E bit. So to make a gallon of ethanol by growing it, you have to use 1,000 gallons of water. Now, that's going to stop when the data centers want all your water, obviously.
Mhm.
And that compares to only 6 gallons of water when you're drilling the stuff out of the ground. So it's a vastly different thing. Now, not only that, the ethanol's not as good as gasoline. It's got less energy in it. A bit like LPG has less energy in it than petrol does. So if you run your car on LPG, you burn more LPG than you would if you're running it on petrol. Nevertheless, E10 gas, let's say you're adding 10% ethanol to your petrol. You're going to put 5 gallons of water, or you're going to burn 5 gallons of water making it for every mile driven. So you're actually consuming a lot more water than you are consuming fuel if you are growing these things. And that's about 18 times as much as you would be using if your E10 gasoline was in fact E0 gasoline. And E10, that's only 10%. It's only marginal. But even so, if you put 10% ethanol in your petrol, you increase the water requirement by 18 times compared to just growing it. In addition, producing a gallon of corn ethanol consumes more energy than producing a gallon of dinosaur blood, a lot more. So much so that there's little what's called EROI, energy return on energy invested. So to produce a fuel, you can't consume more fuel making it than you get back making it. Otherwise, you're in a negative thing. And the final conclusion of the report was that the industry is only viable because of government mandates and subsidies. So that beautifully gels with what I said last week, which was that the industry, so there was the sugar industry in Queensland, and there was also calls for bio fuels. And the reason that industry was running to government to get these mandated is because their product wasn't any good. If adding ethanol to your petrol was a good idea, people would just do it. Shell would make it and people would buy it because it was good. It's not good, so they only do it if they're forced to. And yet another mandate. Does that ring a bell? Big industry running to government and saying, our product's no good. Can you force people to use it?
Yeah, and there's an example there. Innocent bystander said high performance turbo hot hatch stupidly ran it on E10. It sucked up too much moisture. It rusted out the fuel pump. Never again.
Yep. And I made this point. If you want to store fuel, do not store E10 because water will, I don't know if it's in it already or if it attracts it through the can or whatever, but the stored gasoline that you've got ethanol in, you'll find that when you go to use it, it'll be water contaminated. And obviously, you put that in your car and you're in trouble.
Yep. And like you said, anything that's good for you shouldn't be mandated. If it was actually decent and good for you and worked, it wouldn't need to be mandated, would it?
Isn't it the old graphic? Government ideas so good they have to be mandatory.
That's right. Yeah, with a gun against your head. Yeah.
Yes. Now, I've sort of covered the not easy being green there under those updates. And as a result, I don't actually have any not easy being greens this week. And that might be a first.
Yeah. Geez, I tell you what, slackening off a bit after nearly 110 shows.
But, I mean, just relabel the previous segment.
Okay.
All right. What about a quick rip through finance? And once again, not much happening this week. The markets are discounting the risk of the Gulf War, and everything's either flat or down a bit. So gold, silver, Bitcoin all down a bit, stock market down a bit, and oil price down a bit. So the Mr. Market is saying nothing to see here, no problems, don't worry about it.
Not huge numbers, are they? I mean, it's down. I mean, percentage, but I guess depends on how much you got invested. I guess if it's down, but like 1 to 2% to 3% is probably not a break the bank kind of scenario.
They're pretty typical week-on-week changes. So once again, yeah, like I'm saying, Mr. Market just doesn't think there's anything worth thinking about here. And Mr. Fuel Market in Australia also thinks that the Gulf is a non-issue, with around 10 cent per litre reductions in most of the fuels again, week on week. So we're pretty much back to where we were, with the possible exception of diesel. So, $1.71 for petrol, or $1.73, that would have been about what, you wouldn't have driven past a service station if you're buying petrol at $1.70. Diesel's up a bit at $2.18, but it's down from last week by 11 cents. So you got this ongoing downward slide after the initial major reaction in markets. None of those problems have been fixed, but almost everything seems to have settled back to virtually normal.
It's like that old tornado analogy, isn't it? It's like the eye of the storm.
Yeah, that is a good analogy, because this problem ain't fixed. And even if it ended right now, we're looking at a year or more to get back to maybe 75% of what was coming out of the Gulf. So it's a major thing, and Mr. Market is ignoring it. And the general pop's pretty much ignoring it too, aren't they?
Business as usual, most people.
Business as usual, exactly right. So a fairly quick zip, therefore, into health, and there's a fair bit in health this week. And as noted, a friend of the channel, Henley97, sent me this YouTube clip and said, watch this, which I did. And so this is a podcast about coenzyme Q10. And I'll flash the slide up at the end as well if you're interested in finding it. And I learned a lot about CoQ10 in watching this. So, all right, what is CoQ10? So CoQ10, coenzyme Q10, is a critical nutrient that's made in every cell in your body. So it sounds rather like cholesterol, doesn't it? It's so important that every cell in your body makes it. Now, it's very important for muscle function, and so you do find a lot of it in muscles, and apparently liver is a good dietary source as well. And in fact, whilst your body makes lots of this stuff, you can also obtain it in your diet. And given it's important for muscle function, a lot of where you find it in your diet is in things related to that. So meats, fats, oils, seeds as well, although we've discussed in the past, I wouldn't recommend you eat seeds. Seeds are trying to kill you. So I wouldn't be going there. So that's what it is. It's a little very important molecule, and this is what it does. So it's critical for energy production in cells. And so if you get a deficiency of it, if you don't have enough CoQ10, you get muscle problems. You get pain and weakness in your muscles, and that extends to your heart, which is a muscle too. So CoQ10 deficiency can cause cardiac failure as well. All right. It's an antioxidant and anti-inflammatory, and modern life is full of oxidative stress and inflammatory challenges, so that's a good thing.
Oh, is it in the vitamin I family?
Well, vitamin I, of course, is good for the inflammatory disease. Have you started on your vitamin I for your arthritis, Mark?
It's on the way.
Do I have to send you some, or have you?
It's in the post.
You've been to see your vet, have you?
Yeah, been to see the vet. It's in the post.
Good on you. Now, the other thing that CoQ is important for, and look down this list. So it's very important for fertility, and that's because it's important for sex hormone production. So testosterone and estrogen. It's very important for immune function, rather like vitamin D was. And in fact, CoQ10 is required for vitamin D production. It's important for brain function, and it's important for insulin sensitivity. And those bottom four I'm going to discuss a bit more because we have an epidemic of failure in all of these areas in society. We've got declining fertility, we've got immune compromise, we've got an epidemic of dementia, and we've got an epidemic of diabetes. Now, it's
you might know
therefore
what selenium is. Do you know what selenium is?
selenium, I believe, is a mineral, a trace element, and the person to tell us all about that is the cattle farmer and scientist from the Adelaide Hills, whose name dementia.
Oh, Graham Lyons.
Graham Lyons. I believe he did his PhD on that.
Dr. Graham Lyons. Yeah. Okay.
And I'm worried that I couldn't pull that name because did you know it was National Dementia Day? I forgot all about it.
Yeah, me too.
Well,
That's not unusual. That's not unusual, though.
All right.
Yeah.
So, just reminding you of the listing there of what CoQ10 is really important for, because that feeds into this. Because statins, which is one of the most popular and profitable drugs on the market, and in fact, it's one of the prescribing parameters that the regulators will look at. So if a GP is not prescribing enough statins across his population, he'll be getting a please explain. So there's very much a government program pushed out through the doctors, who of course are government workers, to get everybody on statins, whether they need it or not. And statins bugger up CoQ10 production.
Of course.
So by doing that, you get this list of things that statins can cause. Muscle pain. Everybody knows that statins can cause muscle pain. And your doctor will, of course, deny that. But I went almost never go to a GP, even going back decades. But at some point, I did get badgered into taking some statins by a GP, and I immediately got muscle pain. So I went back and complained about it, and the GP said, "Oh, that's unusual. We'll put you on a different statin," which caused the same thing. And then I went, "No, screw this," and I went and did my own research and discovered, well, of course, they cause muscle pain. Statins damage muscles. They cause muscle damage. That's why your muscles hurt. You get muscle weakness. So there's that. So statins themselves can cause CoQ10 deficiency and muscle pain. They can also cause brain fog. And a dear friend of mine illustrated that very well. He was a communications engineer, so smart guy in a technical job. And he also got badgered into taking statins at one point. And he said within a week, he became unable to function at work. He just couldn't think. He couldn't do the things that he had to do at work anymore. His brain just didn't work. So he was smart enough to go, "Oh, I wonder if it's the statin," and he stopped it. And first rule, if you develop a new symptom and you've recently been put on a new drug, stop the bloody drug. First thing to think about. See if it then goes away. Because all drugs are poisons, all drugs have side effects. So this dear friend, he stopped the statins and he got better. Anyway, went back to the GP and the GP said, "Oh, never heard of that. We'll put you on a different statin." Isn't it a popular theme, isn't it? Deny the poison side effects and just put you on another version. And it happened again. At which point my friend said, "No, not ever taking that shit again." Stopped it. But it's a common pattern. The doctors won't tell you it's a potential issue. If you work out that it might be, they'll say it's not that. We'll try something different. And hopefully at that point, if it happens again, you fire your doctor because they're hurting you. So we've got muscle pain and fatigue. We've got brain fog. Now, what about diabetes? I didn't know this, but if you have low CoQ10 levels, you're more at risk of diabetes. And the reason you're more at risk of diabetes is because one of the effects of CoQ10 is that one at the bottom, insulin sensitivity. And type 2 diabetics pump out lots of insulin, but their cells just don't respond. They're what's called insulin resistant. So, statins can actually cause insulin resistance i.e. diabetes and heart failure.
Hmm.
So reading down that shocking list of what CoQ10 is important for, and the fact that statins, which your GPs are monitored to make sure they badger everybody into taking it, actually causes the problems that they tell you they're trying to prevent. So I've just ringed a few of them. So what have we got there? We got brain fog. Well, what do you think dementia is? It's your brain not working properly. We have an epidemic of dementia at the same time as we have an epidemic of statins. What about diabetes? When your doctor badgers you into taking a statin because otherwise you're going to get a heart attack and die, probably before you get out the door, did your doctor tell you that the statins increase your risk of diabetes by 50%?
Wow.
And by the way, diabetes is the #1 risk factor for heart disease. So they're giving you a drug to prevent heart disease, which causes diabetes, which causes heart disease.
Well, they're just closing the loop, Bruce. They're just trying to make whatever their agenda is, trying to make it as most effective as possible.
Note also that heart failure, like I've said, you get muscle weakness. Your heart's a muscle. So statins cause heart weakness. So again, your GP who's badgering you into this drug to save your heart is causing your heart to get vascular disease and heart failure. I bet they never tell you any of that.
Of course they don't.
And finally, we've got immune dysfunction there. And we also have an epidemic of cancer, and it increases your risk of sepsis as well. Sepsis is systemic body-wide infection. So how much of the current chronic health epidemic, dementia, diabetes, heart disease, heart failure, cancer, is caused by the medications that they're all badgered, they're all trained to badger patients to taking, when they're just causing the problem? You know, how far have we come from since the olden days when if you had an illness, your doctor would whack a needle in and take a litre of blood off? That doesn't work, take another one off. You know, the physicians in the old days used to kill you with all their clever medications, which made things worse. And the only useful doctors were not doctors at all. They were the barbers who lanced your boils and set your fractures.
Yeah, true. Yeah, good old.
That, by the way, is the genesis of the modern British practice of referring to surgeons as Mr.
Okay.
So whilst a surgeon is a doctor with a medical degree, when they complete their higher level training and become a fellow of the College of Surgeons, they're granted the honorary title as Mr. So it's quite bizarre in the hospital system where you're a junior doctor, you're doctor, and the registrars, the trainees above you, are doctor. And when the registrars finish all of their training, which might take 6 to 10 specialist years, they revert back to being Mr. and it's a compliment. Well, now that I know the history of it, yes, it is a compliment. It is a compliment because it means they are no longer the physicians that killed you. They're actually reverted back to the barbers who can do something useful for you.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's almost, it's pretty amazing. And I've seen so many comments, you know, since the 1920s, probably even earlier than the early 1900s, you know, where people you know, really hammering the old pharmakeia kind of influence over society. You can see, like, we're meant to be so advanced now and come forward in leaps and bounds, yet we've got a chronic health epidemic. It's almost like it's planned. Like, here's these, I mean, these research and scientists that look at these drugs like statins, you know, how much research has gone into that, where they would, I would assert they would almost certainly know that this is the outcome. And if that's the case, then it's a deliberate mortation of the bloody population. It's a deliberate attempt to kind of, you know, cause, you know, chronic illness.
Of course it is, same as vaccines.
Yeah.
It might have started off with good intent, and I think maybe it did, and that was a long time ago. But I think the inner circle that had done the research, they knew this was an issue and they regarded it as a positive.
Yeah.
You know, think of the vaccine story. They never publish a study showing the side effects, the chronic illnesses that vaccines cause. Now, that's not because they don't know. I mean, they'd love to have the study and prove that their vaccines are great and save anybody. They've done the studies. When they discovered that they're terrible, they don't publish the studies and they don't stop selling the product because that's a bonus.
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
Well, it's money. It's money to be made, isn't it? That's the thing. It's like, who cares? Like, who cares about? And this is what I mean. These people don't care about these people at that level. I'm not talking about nurses and people that genuinely care for people's well-being. I'm talking about these people that actually care whether that people die of it. Like, to them, it's all about the money at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, and that's it.
Profits.
And all they've done is they've captured the employees, the doctors. The doctor's job is to sell drugs. They've captured the regulators. That's why GP practices get monitored to make sure they're using enough drugs. And why doctors like Dennis Borsos, who we'll discuss a bit later, who refuse to act in this manner, they get rubbed out of the profession. Dennis Borsos was told that he was practicing at a substandard level. Well, it depends on what victory looks like. If victory looks like a well patient, that's the last thing the health industry wants, because it's not a health industry. It's just a sickness
industry.
Not healthcare, it's sick care.
Sickness care, that's right. And what we need is more people like Dr. Ian Brighthope and turn it all around, Bruce. People like you joining him and working together and, fixing this whole big mess.
Well, the forces of darkness are very powerful.
Yes, they are. Yeah, very much so. It's ancient.
Anyway, I thought that was really interesting. CoQ10 is important, and I didn't know that. And our healthcare industry, amongst their weapons, is to attack CoQ10 and then produce all the side effects that they can use. And I think at least up until now, they weren't genuinely trying to kill us. They were trying to make us all sick. It's a bit like a bacteria. Ebola doesn't cause worldwide pandemics because it's too pathogenic. If Ebola gets into a village, you might get 30 or 50 or 100 people die, but it all happens so quickly and so dramatically that you either get a quarantine or everybody within the drop radius of the village dies of it, and then Ebola's got nothing to feed on. So the same thing in the sick care industry. I think they don't actually want to kill us. They want to make us as sick as possible for as long as possible with as many diseases as possible so they can keep pushing all the drugs. That's what it's about. Yeah,
exactly right, mate. I was going to just have a quick shout out to Aussie Truth Seeker. I can see comments, they're quite lengthy in that, but I haven't gone personally down that rabbit hole. I am aware of Dr. Ardis and the things he talks about in regards to snake venom, but also the whole parasites thing and that. But I'm aware of it, but I haven't really done a bit of a deep dive into that myself. But just acknowledging that and seeing your comments there in the chat, but it's not something that I don't know whether Bruce has done much on it or researched it. But there's a few lengthy comments there, but just acknowledging that we're seeing it.
Look, I've heard of that as well. And again, I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. Trust me, I have so many rabbit holes to go down that, I fall down something if I try and walk outside. But I would make the point that ivermectin and fenbendazole, which are anti-parasitics and seem to be useful for a whole variety of things, does not mean that the illness is caused by parasite necessarily. Ivermectin's got about 12 different useful lines of action. It's antiviral, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, soaks up spike proteins, etc., as well as killing parasites. So just because they are labelled as parasite drugs doesn't mean that the illness that gets better from them is parasite caused. So I think that's important to know.
Sure. Yep. No worries.
Anyhow, so take it out. What I've been talking about there is I've learnt that CoQ10 is really important and that statins deplete it and is probably the cause of the statin side effects. But to add to that, and I've discussed this many a time, I don't believe cholesterol is a poison at all. It's a vital molecule in your body. It's made by every cell that makes anything. And that's not an accident. It's not a poison that, Pfizer needs to fix an evolutionary error. Every single cell in your body makes it. There's a reason for that. So, and if you get low cholesterol, you get a whole lot of problems. So I don't believe cholesterol is a poison. I don't believe the cholesterol hypothesis at all. And the cholesterol hypothesis says that heart disease is caused by cholesterol that you've eaten soaking through the walls of your vessel and clogging them up. That's the simple cholesterol hypothesis. It's a fraud. The original studies with Ansel Keys back in, I think, the 60s or 70s were a fraud. The 7 countries study, which was the pinnacle genesis of the whole statin industry, the whole fat is bad for you industry, was a fraud. They had data on 17 countries in Europe where they looked at the heart disease rates and the fat consumption of the people in those countries. They dropped 10 countries from the study because the graph didn't produce anything, and they left 7 in, which allowed them to produce that graph showing correlation between dietary fat and heart. It was a complete fraud. That fraud has been built upon for decades, and they've had to continually twist. They've tortured that basic model. You eat fat or cholesterol, it clogs up your vessels. It's a simple model, but there have been so many glitches to it that they've had to add and add and add. And it's almost like, the Ptolemaic view of their solar system, when they, the Earth was God's creation. It was the center of the universe and everything rotated around it. And over time, astronomers went, well, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. And they came up with all these extra complicated reasons why, it still worked. And eventually they had to throw it and say, you know what? The sun's the center. The Earth rotates around it. So the more layers you've got to add to a model, the less likely it is to be true. So them's my thoughts on that. And if you want to have a look at that, I found it to be a very good expose by this American doctor. And here's how you find it. You can either just do a search for unlocking the power of CoQ10 for heart health and beyond, or if you can be bothered, you can laboriously copy and type out the YouTube link there. And to finish, just a few notes from watching this. I've said that CoQ10 is much more important than I understood. You can get it in your diet, so you can eat it. But it's poorly absorbed if you do, and it's best absorbed if you eat it with something fatty. It's best found in something fatty when you eat it. And finally, if you buy tablets of it, there's a couple of forms. There's ubiquinol and ubiquinone. And according to this YouTube story, you want to go for ubiquinol because it's better absorbed. And remember, CoQ10 is not super well absorbed anyway.
There you go.
All right.
If you choose to.
Do your own research, I think.
That's it.
Or alternatively, just do whatever the government tells you. I don't know. They're both equally good, I suppose.
Yep. Anyway.
Now, hot on the heels of that, and especially the bit about cholesterol and brain function, and by the way, there's more cholesterol in your brain proportionally than any other organ, which is one of the reasons why messing up your cholesterol messes up your brain. So this one for the Trust the Experts file, because here we've got the Deputy Head of Dementia Research giving us her recipe for how to avoid dementia. And in my opinion, she doesn't start all that well. So how did she start? So here's a little bit from it. She is working on an mRNA vaccine to prevent Alzheimer's disease from developing. So that's reported in the article.
So, but the headline says sleep sauna, no social media. So she's saying, like, just go to sleep, you you little sheep. Don't worry about following what's happening. Hop in a sauna, and no social media, because social media might actually you might listen to some alternative podcasts like Dr. Bruce Paix and maybe give you alternative information. So she wants you to hide away, Bruce, and not know that she's actually developing mRNA vaccine to prevent Alzheimer's.
Yep. So, yeah, let's look at that. So, number one, mRNA vaccine. Are you effing kidding me? Seriously? This is from a dementia research scientist. We all know that brain fog was one of the signature side effects of the COVID vaccines. And the first ever large-scale mRNA trial showed that. That, by the way, was the COVID injections. And there are plausible mechanisms for that. What was called the delivery agent for the mRNA vaccines, they were delivered in a little fatty globule called a lipid nanoparticle. And lipid nanoparticles were specifically invented to get drugs into the brain. They originally used them to try and get cancer drugs into the brain because your brain keeps everything out except alcohol. It's got what's called a blood-brain barrier because your brain is the most important organ in your body and it doesn't want stuff buggering it up. So it's very difficult to get drugs into the brain. So in an attempt to get cancer drugs into the brain, they develop these lipid nanoparticles, these little fatty droplets, because they can cross the blood-brain barrier and get in. The problem with that is that these lipid nanoparticles are inflammatory. So they cause inflammation in your brain. So even if you just take lipid nanoparticles, you're likely to get brain side effects, brain inflammation. Now, on top of that, in the COVID era, they put stuff inside that delivery system. So that was carted into your brain as well. So that's bad. So first off, I'm saying here, she hasn't started well because she thinks that an mRNA vaccine might be a good way to go to prevent dementia, when on first principles, it's likely to cause neuroinflammation. Not a good start. All right. Now, secondly, for breakfast, we have fruit, yogurt, muesli, and toast. Got it? So the next thing you want to do to prevent dementia is you want a carb-heavy breakfast. Check. Got it?
Okay. Yeah. And we've unpacked that a bit over the shows too, haven't we, Bruce?
We've many times spoken about my belief that many chronic diseases are inflammatory diseases and that one of the principal inflammatory sources is carbohydrate in processed food. Seed oils, I'd add to that. But carbohydrates are inflammatory. It's not normal to eat a lot of them in nature. Indigenous peoples rarely had access to them. I've said to you, walk around the Australian bush and tell me what sugar you can find. There isn't any. Okay. So dementia is an inflammatory disease. So is autism, by the way. And on the corollary, I believe that eating meat means your body runs on ketones rather than on carbs. And I personally noticed at least a 30 to 50% increase in what I call clock speed. When I went carnivore, I was amazed at how quick or how much mental energy I had and how long it went. You know, prior to going carnivore, I'd be doing a boring anesthetic list. I'd get to 4 o'clock in the afternoon and think, you know, is this day ever going to end? When I went carnivore, I'd look at my watch, it'd be 5:45, and I'd be saying to the surgeon, do you want to do another case? Mental fatigue was gone. Brain works better, brain stamina is better. So I don't think it's a good start if you think a carb-heavy breakfast is a good way of avoiding dementia, when my experience is the complete opposite. All right, next, aim to eat 30 different plant-based foods every week, including 5 different vegetables and 3 different fruits every day. So it's not just a carb-heavy breakfast that this dementia expert wants. They want you to have a carb-heavy diet across the board. Now, there's such a thing as carbohydrate coma, and that's what you experience after a big Christmas lunch. So sure, you've eaten your turkey and your ham, but you've also had lots of chocolate and sweets and all that sort of stuff. And it's the carbs in those that basically puts your brain and your body to sleep. And there's an evolutionary mechanism for that. Not that I believe in evolution anymore, but go back in the day. So you got the monkeys. They've come across the fig tree, the native fig tree, late in the season, and they've gorged. They've sat around, they've eaten every fig they can find. And that's a natural thing. The figs are full of sugar. The sugar's converted into fat. The fat helps you get through the winter. That, by the way, is helpful because a lot of fruits sort of ripen towards the end of summer, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
So having done that, having had your carbohydrates, you then have the carbohydrate coma. That's where you all lie around after lunch going, I don't want to do anything. Oh, I need a nap. Oh.
Yeah.
I believe that's a generic effect of carbohydrates on the brain, and that's what you get if your metabolism is burning sugar all the time rather than ketones all the time. And ketones all the time is what you burn when you're on meat.
Mm.
Anyway, the experts say the opposite. You should go vegan or vegetarian, apparently. So, yeah, I'm going to watch this space on that, but I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, I think, and I don't think I'll get dementia. Do let me know if I'm wrong.
What?
I did forget Alzheimer's Day. I must have.
Yeah. Very interesting.
All right. Now, another health story, and it's now only a week until winter. In fact, it's a bit less than a week, isn't it? And you might recall, I start each new season with a 5-day fast, water and nothing else. And I've noted in the past that fasting is common in many cultures and many religions. Muslims do it. There are certain food restrictions in Christianity and many other cultures. They fast for spiritual or health reasons.
100%.
Fast.
Yep.
When I come on next week, I'll be partway into that. This story has looked at the benefits. In this case, they're talking about a 7-day fast. But here's what the article said about the benefits of that. So according to the study published in Nature Metabolism, the most significant biological changes, including shifts in proteins linked to the brain, metabolism, and immune system, only occurred after 3 days. So up to 3 days, you're not really gaining much. Between 3 and upwards, you are. And a typical 5-day fast led to a 5-kilo weight loss, what they call autophagy and mitophagy. And that's very helpful because when you're not consuming calories for energy, your body uses internal sources. Now, it burns fat, sure, but it also goes through all the cells and burns all the old furniture. So it might burn the whole cell if it's old and what they call senile. Or it might just pick out the parts inside the cell. And cells are these complex cities full of, vast numbers of protein machines. So when you're fasting, your body goes through and says, that mitochondria is pretty old. Let's burn that. Just like you burn the furniture in a building to keep warm. So it picks out the old stuff and burns it for energy. And then when you refeed, it makes new ones. So it's a way of replacing cruddy old stuff in the cells for new stuff. And it lowers inflammation and improves blood sugar control. So they're the sort of benefits that they found from a fast. So as I said, I agree. I think one of the most important things you can do for health is fasting. And I'll be doing a 5-day starting very soon because I do that every 3 months. And it's not difficult, by the way. For all you people who go, oh, I couldn't even miss breakfast, I'd die. If that's genuinely true, that's because you're eating too much carbohydrate. When your body's eating the right fuel, which is fat and protein, you can easily go for 5 days generally, and not even be particularly hungry. I mean, I find, look, it'd be nice to have a cup of coffee, it'd be nice to, eat a steak, but I'm not, God, where do I get food from right now? It would be a nice to, not a desperate need. And that's even after 5 days. Might be worth people looking into.
And Emery's got a comment. What is it? Fast is not great for some people. Caution is required. There might be some reasons where people might not be able to, where it might. What sort of things people would be looking for if they start fasting? And that obviously you're not going to go cold turkey. You look into these sorts of things, don't you? So
Yeah, it's going to, if you're not what we call fat adapted, if you're eating the SAD, the standard American diet, so the recommended high carb, high processed food, your body's burning sugar all the time. And you don't store sugar well. So you have your breakfast, which is sugar, by the way. Even if you eat muesli or all bran, your body just chops it up into sugar. And that all gets dragged into the cells and burnt. And a few hours later, your body's going, okay, where's the next bit of sugar? So if you're eating the standard diet, you get hungry in a few hours after a meal. If you're eating a carnivore diet or a keto diet, where most of your diet comes from fat and protein, you don't get that. The carbohydrates and the drop-off when you consume them is what causes hunger. So I don't get particularly hungry on a fast because I'm fat adapted. My body's used to burning ketones. And if I'm not eating meat to burn them, I just burn some of my own cells to do it. Now, where might it be bad? Okay. If you're on a medication, like a diabetic sugar-lowering medication, and then you don't eat sugar, that's going to be bad. So you've got a drug in your system that's already trying to drop your blood sugar, and then you don't eat anything. That'd probably be bad. But I don't think there's many causes across the board where I go, oh, this person shouldn't fast, because in nature you did. The caveman had whole days or even a week where he didn't catch anything. The human body is adapted to periods of eating and then periods of involuntary fasting. It's just what it is. Now, having said that, the last thing I'll do is go and get your doctor's advice how to do it, because they'll just tell you straight up, oh, God, no, don't do that. Eat your muesli.
Yeah. And Ivan's gone, you should fast 1 out of 3 days. So he's sort of like looking at different ways and, fast 1 day out of 3 and as a rolling thing by the sound of it. But yeah, I think whatever works. I mean, it's worth trying for people, just be cautious, I guess. And, fluids is probably a good one. And making sure your water intake's really good, I guess, is something to really consider during those periods of time.
That's interesting because Brett Weinstein from the Dark Horse podcast actually covered this a while back. Most people, when they fast, do what's called a water fast. All you have is water because, if you're having juices or milk or whatever, it's got calories in it. So you're not really fasting if you're still taking some fluids. So most people go, it's a water fast. All I can have is water or black tea or whatever. And Brett Weinstein from Dark Horse podcast, fantastic, long philosophical discussions. He actually did a 7-day dry fast where you have nothing for 7 days. Now, we were taught that, if you don't have water for 3 days, you're dead. Now, that's garbage because there have been many people who've survived shipwrecks at sea for a week or two with no water and no food. But Brett Weinstein said, look, I did a 7-day water fast, and he'd be in his 60s. He's like me. A 7-day dry fast. And what happens when you're not taking any water is that you burn fat and turn it into water. It's called metabolic water. A camel does not store water in its hump. It stores fat. And so you meet your energy needs by burning fat, and in doing so, you create water, and that can cover your water needs. Now, I'm not saying rush out in summer and, dehydrate yourself by, running a marathon in a 40-degree day. But for ordinary activities, there's plenty of people who've gone 7 days without even taking water. And you get the added benefit that you burn more fat because some of it you're using to make water. And so if a metabolic reset and some weight loss is your goal, you're going to lose more weight when you're dry fasting than when you're water fasting. I haven't tried it, but interesting thought. Maybe I should.
Yeah, well, it's out there. It's just information for people if they want to try things and look it up themselves. Do your own research. These are just ideas that are bounced around after all. Some of the things Bruce does try and others suggestions. So, at the end of the day, it's worth looking into if you you've got
Yeah.
issues fasting, yeah, it's worth trying.
Anyhow, that story just supported or added evidence to the fact that, fasting has beneficial effects on your metabolism, anti-inflammatory, etc., etc.
Yep, nice.
Righto, next health story. So diphtheria is the disease of the month in Australia, apparently, and health authorities are concerned because there's been an outbreak. And in fact, there's been over 200 cases reported, mainly in remote Aboriginal communities. And this has started to make press in Australia. The media is starting to get interested. So I thought, okay, I might just do a little revision. What is diphtheria? So diphtheria is a bacterial infection, and that's different to a lot of what we discuss here. We do discuss a lot of viral infections. So diphtheria is a bacterial infection. It's caused by Corynebacterium diphtheriae. And it can either be a respiratory infection, so sore throat, or it can be a skin infection. They're the two forms of it. And serious illness, people can die of this. And when they do, it's usually because of the effect of a thing that the bacteria produces called the diphtheria toxin. And that toxin causes necrosis. It breaks down tissues, and it can cause so much muck to develop in your airway that it obstructs. And it also can cause cardiac failure. So it's the toxin is the main mediator of serious illness rather than the infection itself. And if you want another example like that, tetanus is the same. When you get tetanus, you stand on a nail traditionally, you've got a small local infection somewhere, doesn't make you very sick, but the bacterium produces the tetanus toxin, which is a paralytic. So diphtheria is the same. It's a relatively ordinary infection, which is made worse by a toxin that the bacteria produces. Now, I'm a bit puzzled by that, because if the toxin adds to the illness and can cause the death of the host, that's not really what the bacteria wants. So just on first principles, I'm not sure what the benefit to the bacteria is in producing the toxin which kills the host. The bacteria would rather not kill the host and just use the host indefinitely, a bit like governments and taxpayers. So anyway, that's what it is. I've got a question in my mind is, okay, well, why is it doing that? There must be some benefit. Nevertheless, diphtheria sounds nasty from what I've said. So let's use the text of the article here just to make a few points, because the first thing the story does predictably is it jumps to vaccination as the cure, and it jumps to failure to vaccinate as the cause. So, pretty soon the story tells you, yep, obviously people are not getting vaccinated against this, and we need a campaign to vaccinate people. Rush out, get your vax, etc., etc. Okay, but there's a couple of wrinkles in the story here. So first off, here's the thing. One of the things that the story says, it says vaccination against diphtheria in Australia has largely eliminated the disease. Now, you hear that all the time. Every childhood disease was eliminated by vaccines. They keep telling us. But like I say, there's a wrinkle or two there. So let's look at them. So what is the vaccine and how does it work? So the vaccine targets the toxin produced by the diphtheria bacteria. It doesn't kill the bacteria itself. And like I said, tetanus is the same. You get a tet tox. You get immunized against the poison that the bacteria produces, not against the bacteria. So the diphtheria vaccine is the same. It targets the toxin. And what this means is it does nothing to the infection. You can still get your diphtheria infection. You can still get your tetanus infection. It's just you don't get very sick because the immunization attacks the toxin. You understand what I'm saying? So it doesn't stop you getting infected. It stops you getting poisoned by the toxin that the bacteria makes. And this point is subtle, but it's important because it extinguishes any community benefit argument, not only for this vaccine, but for any vaccine that works in this way. If the vaccine can't prevent the illness, then you can't argue that I should take it to stop me spreading the illness to someone else. Because the diphtheria vaccine does not stop me getting the infection diphtheria. It just stops me getting sick with the effects of the toxin. So that's an important distinction. And the reason it's important is because this was true during the COVID era as well. The COVID shots did not stop you getting a cold. If they did anything, it was they stopped you getting really sick. And the reason for this was the COVID vaccines were injected. So they were given into your arm, which cannot prevent you getting a respiratory infection. It's Ted Steele's old two-compartment model. You've got two separate immune systems. If you inject into the arm and you make antibodies to an attack into your arm, it doesn't work in your lungs. So that was true during COVID. And for that reason, you could never argue that I need my COVID vax because it stops me getting COVID, which stops me giving it to grandma. No, it doesn't. It never stopped you getting the infection. It maybe stopped you getting sick after it invaded into the internal part of your body. It never stopped it getting into your lungs. And I've got one other thing to say, which is, of course, that diphtheria vaccines contain aluminium, which is worth discussing. All right. Now, next point. Was vaccination really the thing that cured or conquered diphtheria?
There's a familiar pattern, isn't there?
It's a familiar slide, isn't it?
Dr. Thomas.
Like so many other childhood infections, the disease was largely conquered before the vaccine started. And in the case of diphtheria, the diagram on the right, there was no discernible change in the rate of decline after the vaccine started. So this story telling you that you should get the vaccine because it saved everybody in the past, no, it didn't. It made absolutely no difference. The disease was already pretty much conquered. In the old days, what the real problem was not lack of vaccination. It was appalling living conditions. And when the Western world cured these with plumbing and better sanitation and not having dead horses in the streets and better nutrition, etc., every single one of these illnesses declined away. Not just diphtheria, they all declined away, and they were all declining well before the vaccines came in. So if ever they show you one of these graphs, they'll show you it was high here, and then we brought the vaccine in and it's gone down. And they never expand the graph out and show that it was pretty much gone at the time. So that's worth noting. So the story which says that, vaccines cured diphtheria, not true, was already conquered. And I've said, the main reasons for infectious diseases back in the olden days was appalling living conditions. And that's why we're seeing it now where we're seeing it. Because most of the cases of diphtheria, the 200 cases that are reported, are in remote communities with appalling living conditions, and almost all of them affect bush aborigines. This is not
the newly created ACDC didn't waste any time bringing out a report like this, is they?
Yes, that's right.
The new Australian Centre for Disease Control. Yes. Yes, I wonder.
So the stories told us that, this is a new threat. It's caused by failure to vaccinate, and vaccines will fix it. Almost all of those things are fraud. So just thought I'd pick apart that story, and you'll see more of these stories, I guarantee it. You will see people urging you to go and get boosters, etc., etc. If you're living in Burnside and you don't have an open pit toilet and malnutrition, your risk of getting seriously ill with this is probably pretty low.
But they are relentless, Bruce. They're trying,
Every opportunity.
Every single opportunity. And I think, luckily, fortunately, people are starting to see the pattern.
Now I'm going to ping up this one. So endeavouring to persevere. So the injection turns you into a long-term carrier. No, not really. Your body is perfectly capable of defeating bacterial or viral infections all by itself. It doesn't even need antibodies to do it. Antibodies are only just one small part of your immune system. You've got killer cells and all sorts of things. So your body, if you have a tetanus bacteria infecting you or a diphtheria bacteria infecting you, your body will deal with it. Your body will deal with it. All we're saying in this case is that you can't argue that it prevents you getting infected, the vaccine. It doesn't. It can't. All it does is attack the toxin that makes you sick.
I think the point being made there is that the vaccine's actually like even like the COVID vaccine, it creates so many more issues and diseases than what it was actually designed to prevent. Like there's the issues being created, in particular with COVID and that with the mRNA stuff. So I'm not sure if that's what endeavouring to preserve was getting at there.
And COVID was a bit different because for the first time, the vaccine actually gave you the blueprint for building something in your cells, the spike protein. And there was no end date on that. There was a set of plans installed in every cell in your body, and the body was told, make this.
Yeah, even damaged ones probably.
Not just make this for a week and then stop. We don't know how long it went for. So that's a bit different. And that's going to be a generic feature of mRNA vaccines because that's how they work.
Because isn't the problem then that they also can reproduce ongoing already damaged cells? I wonder if that's what's happening.
Are you talking COVID or diphtheria?
No, COVID.
I have to think about that.
Because if you're thinking cancer rates are skyrocketing, if there's cancer cells in the body, it just starts to replicate a damaged cell, and it makes it worse. Turbo cancers, all that sort of. That's kind of just where I was going with that.
Yeah, I'll follow you there. All right, how are we going? Time check. Gee, time just gets away, doesn't it?
Yeah, an hour and a half. Yeah.
Diversity is strength, Mark. You know that, don't you?
Of course.
So this story from France discusses a common sociological finding, but one that our wise rulers deny, and that is that increasing diversity in a community reduces social cohesion. Fancy that.
Who would have
So
thought?
this report says that now 35% of French citizens are either foreign immigrants themselves or the children or grandchildren of foreign immigrants. And more than half of that group come from Africa. So 13% of French citizens were born overseas themselves, 11% had their parents born overseas, and 10% had their grandparents born overseas. And 50% of these were from Africa, a third of them from North Africa, and 20% of them from sub-Saharan Africa. So that's the situation in France at the moment. Now, so what, our wise rulers might say, because don't we get all this wonderful cultural enrichment? We get aged care workers, we get spicy food, etc., etc. There are benefits. Where is Dr. No one else? And look, that may or may not be true, but it's also true, and the sociology literature has demonstrated this many times, is that social division causes social division. So we get that as well, and we get a subset of the population that's quite interested in jihad and Sharia law. So here's what the report said. Younger Muslims in France are more likely to support Sharia law over French law, with significant backing for radical Islamist groups among the 18 to 25 group, in other words, the violent group. And I wonder whether we should be thinking about that in Australia whilst the Royal Commission's going on for Bondi, or we're just going to concentrate on lawful gun owners, perhaps.
Yeah, and free speech, Bruce.
Yeah, well, that's right. Radicalised. radicalised,
Yep.
devout.
Mm-hmm.
And a related story, but one I put in the so sad, too bad category. This story says that 24 Pakistanis being deported from Ireland back to Pakistan got served pork on the flight.
Oh dear, that would have gone down well. Oh dear.
Okay, so why don't I care? I don't care because their option was to not eat it. I looked it up. It's about a 6-hour flight. Well, I didn't eat for 6 days in prison. It's doable. And arguably, we were both criminals in custody.
Mm.
And the many times in Australia that I've specified non-halal when I've been asked if I have any dietary requirements, and I've had the military ask me this many times, and more recently I've had the CFA, the Country Fire Authority. You know, if you're going on a fire deployment or a military deployment, they say, do you have any dietary requirements? And I say non-halal.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I say that, there's a pause, and then the person I'm speaking to laughs. They
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
Now, if I said I wanted kosher or halal and you laughed at me, there'd be big trouble.
Oh, huge! Absolutely right. Oh yeah, I'd have the bloody cops knocking on my door and everything. I just think it's really good how they got away with it. The people loading up the catering van, whether they knew all this was all planned, whether they just thought this will be a good little trick to play. I don't know how those pork sausages ended up on that catering card. Good on them. Got to give them 10 points for that.
Anyway, like I say, so sad, too bad. You know, if you're a special person, then maybe you should make your own arrangements.
Yeah. It'd have to be pretty interesting to even get deported from Ireland, though. But for you to be in a position to get deported from Ireland back to where, it's really interesting.
Yeah, well, it seems pretty hard to get deported from Britain unless you're a white person who stole a loaf of bread.
You end up being convict. I like it.
All right. Now, this is going to be quite a big segment because this is the government overreach section.
It's a big section.
So to start with, during the week, I listened to this hypothetical on ABC 774 from Melbourne, in which a professor of public health had a theoretical discussion with a hotelier about the practicalities and benefits of banning smoking entirely. The premise being smoking's bad. Why don't we just ban it? That was pretty much the idea. So let me just read. Oh, no, I won't read who they are. Okay, so all right. So I will, however, just pick apart a few concepts that were in the story. So first off, this was a professor of public health. Now, there's no such thing as public health, Mark. All health is private. All health conditions affect individuals, not populations. So to give you an example, let's say I weigh 78 kilos and I'm around about that. And let's say my neighbour weighs 178 kilos and no comments as to whether that's true. What that means is that in our population of 2, the average weight is 128 kilograms. But only one of those 2 people is obese and only one of those 2 people is at risk of all the obesity-related conditions. All health conditions and risks are private, not public. There is no public health intervention here that can cure this. Okay? So public health is a con for a start. Now, here's some of the points that they raised. So they said it would have health benefits. Okay? Health benefits are a personal decision. They're not a public decision. Everything I do in my life has benefits and risks. They're mine to judge. Secondly, they said it will reduce healthcare costs. Well, again, to who? The only reason we're supposed to care about public health costs is because they're socialised across everybody. My neighbour and I share the common cost between us, even though only my neighbour incurs the costs. Well, that's bogus too. We could completely eliminate the problem with public health costs by not having public health. If you've got a health condition, you're an adult, you deal with it, rather than expecting the state and me to deal with it.
People will keep more money of their taxes in their own pockets, and they could probably sort out their own health if they need to in other ways.
About to
Private
make
health.
exactly that point. Exactly that point. And if the government's currently taking 56% of my income away from me in one or other tax, if they weren't doing that, I could afford an awful lot of healthcare for myself if I needed it. I needed it.
Yep.
All right. What else did the experts discuss? They said, believe it or not, banning smoking would improve freedom of choice because a lot of smokers want to give up but can't.
Okay.
So taking away your freedom to smoke will make you freer. That's Orwell there. That's Orwellian. If you want to give up smoking, give up. If you can't do it, it's your problem.
Yep.
And by the way,
122 years old and still smoking, that's not right. Well, there you go. There's a myth out the window. And it comes down to physiological condition things as well. Like some people are more susceptible to certain things than others. And again, it comes down to lifestyle, diet, there's other things, the things that they pump into your system.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, the thing is, I heard someone make a comment, if we're talking about cigarettes, in general, someone made the comment that, the old rollies, and you'd have your own tobacco the way it was in its old form, and your rollies and that were a lot better than the old fully produced multi-million dollar, for the cigarette manufacturers. There's a lot more chemicals in them apparently, in the cigarettes of like today's day, going back 50 years. But before that, it was a lot of rollies and stuff, wasn't it? So apparently a lot better, didn't have all the chemicals in it.
Gazump strike, I'll come to that.
Jeez, I'm going, well, that's nearly 2 gazumpies there. I'm going to get knocked off the show in a minute for keeping gazumping you, brother.
All right, so what else? So they were the points that they discussed. Here are some of the points they did not discuss. It's already illegal for minors to smoke. So they're adding laws to regulate the behaviour of adults that affects adults. They didn't discuss the fact that smoking has benefits. That's why people do it. They're not all helpless victims. Here are some of the benefits of smoking. It feels good. Gives you a head rush, gives you a buzz. Some people say mental clarity. Some people just like it. So there's a benefit. It has some health benefits. It helps regulate schizophrenia. I noticed as a junior doctor that the champion chain smokers were schizophrenics. Schizophrenics would not only light one smoke off the butt of the last one, they would have multiple ciggies going at the same time. And I just noticed that and thought, well, that's interesting. And discovered, many years later, they're self-medicating their nicotinic receptors, which is something that their body is crying out for. They're actually addressing a chemical imbalance by smoking.
Well, that's a good point. Just my brother, he always used to say, he said, well, I am looking after other people's health by smoking, because if I didn't smoke, I'd want to murder someone. So I'm self-medicating.
There you go. And finally, cigarettes have been shown to be beneficial in inflammatory bowel disease, things like Crohn's disease. Now, it would be verboten for your doctor to admit that or tell you that, but I've seen reports of that. And of course, during the COVID era, when we were all expecting the smokers to do worse because they were already had respiratory issues, they actually had a lower risk of getting serious COVID than non-smokers. Anyway, the public health experts did not discuss any of the private benefits of smoking. They also didn't discuss these things. Australia's already trying to ban smoking, and they're using exorbitant taxes to do it. And as a result of that, they've created a criminal market. And same thing will happen if you make smoking illegal, there will be a criminal market. You know, if making things illegal stopped them, well, we wouldn't even need a police force, would we? Why don't we make road crashes illegal? Why don't we make cancer illegal? That'd be great. What do we got there? Appetite suppressant, ease of stress, etc., etc. There are benefits, and it's up to the individual to decide the risk-benefit ratio and decide if they want to do it. They're adults, after all.
I smoked until I was 21. The only reason I stopped is I lost taste for it, whether or not I got a rotten packet or whatever. But it was just disgusting. I couldn't smoke anymore. But I was smoking from when I was 15. So,
yep. And here's what I gave the Gazump strike. They had a caller call into the program that said cigarettes used to be less harmful in the old days, and in fact, there are a number of indigenous tribes that have sort of native tobacco, and they don't seem to get the health effects from it. And I've seen analyses showing that it's not the tobacco per se, it's all the other things that they add to it, including the things that make it addictive.
Yeah, and this is what Anne-Marie said, made a comment here, apparently 60 carcinogenics in the current, multi-manufactured cigarettes, but yeah. And,
I might come back to it in another show, but an interesting thought or allegation is that nicotine itself is not addictive. We are told it's a dangerous poison, it's addictive, blah, blah, blah. I'm partway through reading a monologue on what nicotine does, and it makes that point. And I might do that as a feature in the future.
Well, there was a comment from endeavouring to preserve any studies indicating nicotine alone on its own causes cancer.
Like I say, I'll do a deep dive once I've finished reading the monologue. But I did note that during the podcast, somebody rang in and made this point. It's not the cigarettes per se, it's all the chemicals and addictive substances they add to it that's the problem. And the radio host cut them off straight away. You weren't allowed to say that.
Of course.
You weren't allowed to say that. All right. Okay, next. So, update on the multiple stories we did recently where we talked about how excessively high cigarette taxes created a black market. Well, that's now spreading to alcohol, apparently. So this report during the week said that illegal alcohol, and by the way, the only thing illegal about cigarettes or alcohol these days is you didn't pay your tax. That's the problem. That's the reason they don't like Chinese chop chop. It's because the government didn't get their cut. It's their territory. If you want to sell goods in our territory, you got to pay the big man. So this story in the ABC said that alcohol or illegal alcohol is increasingly being found on bottle store shelves. And they did a survey where they found that 30% of bottle stores had illegal alcohol in them. And they then spun that into a health story because, it could have methanol in it, like those poor girls who died in Thailand, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, look at mine. That's not the point. The point here, I think, is that if you make something illegal or if you just tax it to the end, then people will change their behaviour if they want to keep using it. So up till now in Australia, we've made very heavy efforts to reduce the consumption of cigarettes and alcohol by punitive taxes. And we're now finding out that they're so punitive that, yes, we've created a black market for tobacco. So as a comparison, we have pretty much the highest tax rates on cigarettes and alcohol in the world. So a 20-pack of ciggies in Australia has got about $40 tax on it, $2 a smoke, whereas in the USA, that's $5. And similarly, a 750ml bottle of whiskey in Australia has got $32 worth of tax on it, whereas in the US, it's $3. So for the people who think, well, just we could just bump the prices up, that'll make it no, we're well on the downslope of the Laffer curve. The Laffer curve says if you tax everybody at 0, you collect no tax. If you tax everybody at 100%, you collect no tax. And somewhere in the middle, you collect the most tax.
Mm-hmm.
And the somewhere in the middle is often 10, 20, 30%. Because if taxes are moderate, people just pay them.
Yeah.
If taxes are exorbitant, people put considerable effort into not paying them. And that's why we got a black market for ciggies. It's why it appears we're getting a black market for alcohol as well.
Yeah, they're going to lose out on all that revenue that the government wants to keep themselves in power. You know, they're very, very heavily burdened bloody outfit, the old bloody politics and bureaucrats in Australia. They need to be fed with the taxes, but they're going to starve themselves off it, you know, the way they're going.
I'm doing what I can, mate.
Yeah, as long as you're not spilling it on your keyboard, brother. Right? So just you haven't got your sippy cup yet, have you?
All right. Okay. Here's another health story, and once again, it's the safety Nazis. So this story says that the safety experts in Australia want to restrict your travel speed to 80 kilometres an hour in rural areas for your safety.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what it says. Calls to lower speed limits across Australia's roads are being renewed amid growing concern about the nation's worsening road toll. So says safety experts. Right. Well, I'm a little bit of a safety expert myself because I worked in a crash lab for a couple of years and walked out with a first-class honours degree. So let's examine that claim. So firstly, is the road toll really increasing? So what have we got there? We've got the last 5 years worth of road tolls, 2021 through to 2025. And yet the number of fatalities has gone up a little bit. It's up 16% in 5 years. Okay, well,
how much has the population gone up though?
Mark, are you doing the show or am I doing it?
Done it again.
So I've been a bit rude there. I think what I should say is, grasshopper, your education is complete.
Yeah, just sit there and shut up and you know, put up the comments every now and then. Yep. Okay. Cool. I got it.
So exactly right. So what I've done there is I've now graphed the population over the same period of time. So the population is up 8% in the same time as the road toll is up 16%. So that's half the rise accounted for straight away. And that, by the way, is if you believe the ABS figures, and I don't, because we know that some years lately we're getting 500,000 or more immigrants in a year. So I don't actually believe those figures. I suspect it's gone up more than that. But anyway, using the government figures, half of the increase can be accounted for merely by more bodies. Oh, that might be a bad analogy, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So what other figures have we got? At the end of the day, the transport system is a transport system. It's not a don't crash system. It's designed for mobility. It moves people and goods around the place. And we actually have figures for that. So this is better than just population numbers. And so I wondered, how much has the mileage driven gone up in those 5 years? And so this ABS data says total distances increased progressively from 238 billion kilometres to 264 billion kilometres over a 4-year period, whereas the fatalities are a 5-year period. So I adjusted it upwards a bit to make as if, pro rata for 5. So over 5 years, during which the road toll's risen by 16%, the miles driven has risen by 14%. So in other words, the real increase in the road crash rate is less than 0.5% a year over the last 5 years.
Yep.
Now that's hardly a crisis. That's within the error bands, that's within the position of noise, and it certainly wasn't anything that they mentioned in the media articles. They just said that road safety experts are concerned about the worsening road toll. Okay. Well, I don't think it's that much worse that it's worth locking 20 or 30 kilometres an hour off my travel speed to save 0.4% a year, if it's even real. And the real risk probably is, how about fill some bloody potholes and seal some edges?
Yeah, exactly right. But they don't mention bloody fatigue, mobile phones, bloody, like you said, potholes, kangaroos, tree branches.
And by the way, if you let's say I drove to Adelaide on Saturday and back on Sunday, which, by the way, I did. And then I went north to Lower Light. So basically I did 6, 12. I did 13 hours of driving in, I don't know, a 30-hour period. So if I were traveling 20 kilometres an hour slower, that would have taken me at least 20% longer, which meant I would have added a couple of hours to my trip, much more time to get tired and fall off the road. And remember, like I said, this is a transport system. The point of it is movement. It's not a don't crash system. If you want a don't crash system, you go back to the olden days when you wave a flag in front of, person on the ground with a red flag in front of the automobile so as the horses don't get scared.
Yeah. And you know what, sometimes, and I mean, people always bring up counter arguments and that, but the other thing is that there's also a lot of cases of where people are going too slow. And so people take risks on country roads because they're behind a caravan or a horse float or whatever. That's like in 100k zone, and they're doing 60 in 100k zone, and you just want to be getting around them, and people are just not courteous enough to go find a slip where they can kind of pull over a bit to allow you through. They just hog it. They just hog it at 60 k's in a 100k zone, which is infuriating in my eyes. No matter how much patience you've got, that is. So people take risks, and then ends up, accidents happen that way too.
Even if you discount the risk thing, people value mobility. This is why we lock criminals up for a start. And when I used to do traffic control for the CFS in South Australia, if we had a road section that was closed due to an accident or a tree branch or something, we'd put up, a traffic controller at each end of it, and we'd stop them, and we'd try and, not hold you up for more than a few minutes and then let a packet of cars through. And 50% of the time, like I'd walk down and I'd say, I just need another 5 minutes. We're just doing this. Half of those people would turn around and try and find another way for 5 minutes. And yet these experts, these safety gurus, who obviously aren't transport gurus, they blithely say, well, we'll add 20% to your trip times. And don't even mention it. No, we're just here to save lives. And that's the justification, isn't it? It's for your safety. We will restrict you in any way that we choose. It's for your safety, Mark.
Für ihre Sicherheit.
For ihre Sicherheit.
Für das Allgemeinwohl.
For the greater good. Now, I've got one more thing to add up here, by the way, because the highest road toll ever recorded in Australia was in 1970, and that was nearly 4,000. And that was when we had a population of 13 million. So just on the per capita basis, you were 6 times more likely to die in a road accident in 1970 than you are now. And yet in 1970, the world went on. People didn't stay at home wrapped in cotton wool. It was a manageable and acceptable risk back then, and it is now 6 times smaller now. And yet these safety Nazis think we should drop 20k off our speed limit to address it, when we know we can cope with this. The public chooses that they will cope with it. And what this also means is that we've already made almost all the improvements that can be made. So since the 1970s, we've got seat belts, airbags, better road design, we've got anti-lock brakes, we've got stability control in vehicles, etc., etc., etc. We've broken the back of drink driving. And in doing so, we've reduced the fatality rate markedly, which means we've already done all the easy stuff, and we're now operating at the margins. So to get further improvements, they're going to be more expensive and more intrusive and give us less result because the easy stuff's already been done. Nevertheless,
more restrictions.
Just drive 20k slower, Mark. That'll keep you safe.
Big Daddy government knows best. The bureaucracy, the more restrictions.
Government owns you. They don't care about your mobility.
Oh, wait till you're locked up in your small cities, and you can can't go here and there, and you got to go on a bike or bicycle path, and you can't, like in the UK.
Yeah. Still, if it saves one life, it's worth it, mate.
Oh, yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
All right. Now we're still in the big government section, aren't we? So, how's this for an example of the caring nature of government?
Mm-hmm.
So the ATO, the tax office, fined a 97-year-old woman for late lodgement of a tax return, something that her recently deceased husband had been doing all the way up until then. So here's what the story says. After a lifetime of submitting tax returns on time, the elderly Brisbane resident lost her husband in mid-2023. Her circumstances were further complicated by the sale of the tax practice formerly used by the couple. So not only did the person who normally did the tax, her husband, die, but the business that normally did it, I don't know, fell over, went bust, whatever. So as a result of that, she was late putting in a tax return at 97 friggin' years of old. Why are you paying tax at 97?
Yeah. What is that?
Haven't
What
you
is
paid
that?
enough?
Wow.
Now, even when her new accountant explained to the tax office what had happened, so what detailed the extenuating circumstances of the ATO and asked for the charge to his client to be overturned, this $1,600 bill. And the ATO replied, your remission has been considered. We've decided not to remit. In other words, no, just pay up.
Wow. Well, we have got a government bleeding money, so they want to drag it out of 97-year-olds, Bruce.
Her accountant explained that, she was a recent widow, didn't know how to do this. Could she have an exemption? They said, no, just pay up. And I find this every time. Anytime you get any sort of demand to pay from any sort of authority, doesn't matter how good your excuse is, the initial response is just pay up. You've got a fine for parking your vehicle where you're exceeding the time limit, and you write in and say, listen, Sherlock, if you looked under the vehicle, you've seen a huge oil stain. It wasn't parked, it was broken down. I had a hole in my sump. I'll say the first response is always, we'll just pay up, sunshine.
Yeah.
You have to get multiple levels through that before you even get a genuine response. So don't pay things just because you're told to start with. Anyway, a complaint was then made to the taxation ombudsman, at which point the ATO backed down. And when they backed down, they said this: the ATO acknowledges that in this instance, our communication did cause unintended offence, and we have both corrected the error and apologised for the communication. So it was just an unintended offence was caused. Was the fine unintended? Because they were pretty keen on it getting paid.
Yep.
That's the level of people that now rule us from council level upwards. Unfeeling bureaucrats that just want our money. They don't care about you. They're not there for you. They're there to feed the bureaucracy.
Yeah, and I suspect the people in those roles, Bruce, are the same people that would have rang up the COVID hotline to dob in their neighbour and stuff like that. These are the type of people that encourage it. These are the people that feel like they probably would have been police officers but never made it, so they want to rule over other people's lives and make other people's life a misery. They're the type of people that we're dealing with.
I reckon they're sitting in the ATO with an orange vest that says taxation warden.
Yeah, even though no one can see them, they can see themselves in a mirror. They probably got a big mirror, that shows the vest and says, taxation warden and all that, and their desk. Yeah, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? The bureaucracy is out of control in our country, and I mean it shows. We're one of the highest countries in the world for bureau. I think we're only number 2, or we're even number 1. I think from a chart that I saw from the cost of our bureaucracy to run our government and bureaucracy. I think we're up in the top 2.
Well, those taxes aren't going to collect themselves, mate.
True that, mate. True that.
Yeah, and by the way, it's just about to get worse because pretty soon AI will be detecting the offences, and in some cases it already is. A lot of those overhead cameras are AI directed, and the fines are issued by AI, and then the reviews are done by AI.
Yeah.
So
yes,
it's going to get
this is where it's all going. This
You
is
think
where
a
it's all going.
bureaucrat's got no emotion or no compassion. Wait till you see what a computer will do to you.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep. No, this is where it's all going, mate. Yep. 100%.
All right. Another government story, and more on the compassion front. So sad news this week because our wise rulers have extinguished the career of Dr. Dennis Borsos from Colac, one of the last remaining ethical doctors in Australia. And what was his crime? His crime was writing vax exemptions for patients during COVID. So in his tribunal hearing, Dr. Borsos's evidence was that if a patient stated they did not wish to have a COVID-19 vaccination, this was sufficient justification to grant an exemption. 100% bloody right, and I do acknowledge the disagreement we have with Elizabeth Hart. In this case, I did this as well, without accepting that exemptions were valid or necessary. If that was the mechanism for avoiding people taking part in a dangerous medical experiment, then I would do it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So
100%. You and Dr. Hobart, and obviously, Dr. Borsos, so many others. Yep.
So I just want to go over that again just a little bit. So here's the ethical underpinnings of that. This was about consent, not about exemptions. So he was rubbed out for issuing exemptions, but exemptions are not the point here. So the basic principle here is that you own your body; it is your property. Arguably, it's more your property than anything else on earth. You own it. That's why slavery is bad, by the way. It means you're stealing somebody else's labour.
Yep.
So because you own your body, it's your property. It's a crime for someone else to deliberately damage it without your consent. And that's why assault is illegal. It's why murder is illegal. It's why rape is illegal. Because these are all things that damage someone else's property, their body, without their consent.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I did say there that without their consent, and that seems a bit odd, but there are times when you might consent to somebody else damaging your body. You might consent to a surgeon doing it, you might consent to a dentist doing it, or you might climb into a boxing ring and do it. Now, so important is that principle that no one else may damage your body without your permission, that in all the medical circumstances where that happens, they need a written document that you gave permission. It's called a consent form, and that's why. It's an indicator that the recipient agreed to it, and therefore it's not assault. Someone sticks a knife in you in the street, that's assault. Surgeon sticks a knife in you in the operating theatre, that's not assault. And the document, the consent form, is vital because it shows that you gave consent. Now, this is very important. The default position here is that because the patient owns their body, they own their consent. So if they say nothing, you cannot stick a needle in them because they have not indicated consent. For this reason, it's not valid to expect the patient to apply for permission to refuse. If the patient says nothing, you don't have permission to go ahead. So all the patient has to do is either say nothing or say no, thank you, and you can't do it.
The difference there, though, is in a first aid scenario with the training, though, isn't it?
If the patient is unable to process the information, you do have emergency powers. And I had emergency powers to treat people if they were not in a position to say yes or no, in emergencies. And that's always true, but those are limited. And that doesn't include vaccinating you whilst you're under anaesthetic to have your appendix out.
That's right.
For example. But the point I'm making is that the default position here is no.
Yep.
And to change that, you actually need evidence of the patient saying yes. You don't need to apply to an authority to get permission to say no. If you say nothing, that equals no. Okay. So the whole concept of issuing an exemption was always invalid. But like I say, if that was the vehicle for protecting a patient, yeah, I'd go along with the charade. But consent is critical. And if you want some examples of that, the Australian Vaccination Handbook still has this in the front, in the preamble. It says, valid consent is the voluntary agreement by an individual to a proposed procedure which is given after sufficient, appropriate, and reliable information about the procedure, including potential risks and benefits, has been portrayed. So there's the important bit. It is given. Consent is given by the patient. It's not a default setting that you have to apply for something different, apply for an exemption. Okay, it's the other way around, and it always has been. They don't need to apply to the state for permission to say no. That's the default position. And here's another example of the importance of consent. So at the Nuremberg trials after the Second World War, amongst the various groups of senior Nazis who were prosecuted included senior doctors. And one of the key crimes that was identified was experimenting on human subjects, medical experiments, without their consent. And that was regarded as so important that that is now the first line in the Nuremberg Code. The voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. And three of the senior doctors were hung at Nuremberg for failing to follow that procedure. So not only does the Australian Vaccination Handbook specifically state that the patient has to give consent, the Nuremberg Code says that failure to get that is a hanging offence. So back to Dr. Bourse's evidence. If a patient stated that he did not wish to have a COVID-19 vaccination, this was sufficient justification to grant the patient a vaccination exemption. That is 100% true. But the state wasn't having that, obviously. The state didn't accept that and rubbed him out for 5 years on top of the 4.5 years he'd already been. Dr. Bourse is now a tree trimmer in Colac.
Wow.
He was the most valuable GP in his town, including his community hospital. He was the go-to guy for everything. He could do anaesthetics, he could deliver babies, he could do trauma. They rubbed him out for acting ethically.
Yep.
Now, during the COVID era, I wrote vax exemptions as well, notwithstanding the invalidity of them that we've just discussed. And I did proper consults. I did 30-minute consults where I looked at the patient's history, where they're going in their future, what do they want to do about family and fertility, and I discussed risks, benefits and alternatives. And if they said at the end of that, well, I don't think this is right for me, then I wrote them an exemption. Now, and this, by the way, is what Dennis Borsos was rubbed out for, doing that. Now, when I wrote the exemptions, the Chief Health Officer in South Australia, Nicola Don't Touch the Football Spurrier, binned them all. So I had a therapeutic relationship with patients. She didn't. She tore up all of my exemptions.
It should have been illegal. Well, it should have been illegal. It should have been. There must be some legal.
You know, if they're going to rub people out for 9.5 years for unethical conduct, how come Professor Spurrier is still the Chief Health Officer and has a public service medal for what she did to us during COVID?
She's part of the system, Bruce. Part of the whole scam.
She was just following orders.
Yep. Ethical people like yourself paid the price, and people like her keep getting rewarded. That's the way it goes, isn't it? But there's not enough outrage from people. And
And, you know, I'm going to finish there, but just to make sure everybody knows, you own your body. You have the absolute right to say yes or no to anything regarding it. You do not have to get permission. A vaccine mandate is invalid. You can refuse it.
Mm. Yep. Yep.
All
Exactly
right.
right. And my freedom of information, as you know, I had a freedom of information in regards to bureaucrats and politicians, what decisions they made in regards to informed consent. You know, what was the discussions and that were had. So I had that refused. I had the FOI refused on a multiple occasions, and I've now got that in front of the Ombudsman, the Information Commissioner, for review on that as well, because, you know, ultimately we need to know what brought their decision, what was discussed at that senior level in regards to the principles you've just mentioned on informed consent. And I think the Australian people need to know what formed that decision making, knowing that there is a guidelines for people, and not to mention that, but also the immunisation handbook states it clearly.
Yep.
The immunisation handbook states it clearly. You have to obtain informed consent, right?
Yep.
And
Which, by the way, was impossible. Because informed consent says you have to tell the intended recipient the risks, benefits, and alternatives. We didn't know what the risks were because, as Dr. Greg Hunt said, you know, this is the world's largest clinical trial. It was an experiment.
100%. Absolutely right.
You cannot tell after 6 months of botched clinical trials what the 5-year safety protocol was. So it's impossible. You couldn't tell people what the risks were. The state then lied about the benefits, you know, 95% effective, protect grandma. That was all bogus. And they criminalised doctors for discussing alternatives. You know, doctors got deregistered for prescribing ivermectin. No mention of vitamin D anywhere. In fact, lock you up in your house. So,
yeah, and here's a little clip for you, Bruce, from our little mate that you just mentioned there. I was going to prime it up and show it, but here it is. Just going to move yours for a second. I'm just going to play this again. Oh, so no one can hear that.
yeah, I didn't have sound. I was hoping you did.
Oh, my apologies. Thanks, TLZD. Yeah, well, my apologies that it wouldn't play that. That's right, because earlier on in the show, I did mention that I had a flag come up saying that I had issues. But anyway, my apologies that you're listening to no sound there. But anyway, this was, if people want to go onto my website on the Faith, Culture, Politics, they can see the update on my FIO request, why the Department of Health's refusal on consent documents matters. So you can check that out there. There's a whole clip that I've shared plenty of times before anyway, all that information there. So my apologies that you didn't have the sound on that. That's a bit frustrating. But anyway, sorry to take that away from you, brother.
How about I'll just try and share it from my end, see if it works on this one. So I've just brought that up. We'll give it one more go, huh?
Yeah. Which one did you bring up?
I've just searched for him. Let's see.
Have you?
Clinical trial, the largest global vaccination trial ever. And we will have enormous amounts of data. But what's the message for the public? It's safe, it's effective, it will help protect you, but it will also help protect your mum and dad, your grandparents, your nonna, all of Australia.
Yep. That's him. The largest clinical trial, the largest vaccination trial ever.
And full of lies. They said it was safe. They said it was effective.
Mm.
They knew it wasn't safe. They had no idea if it was effective because it was still being trialled.
Yep. No, exactly right. Yep.
Yeah.
Conned us all the way through.
Well, they didn't con me.
No, me either. But still come at a cost, in it. I mean, you've paid for it. All your careers, decimated. I thought, for me, many others, this we've mentioned about this before, though, Bruce. You've paid a high price. I've paid a bit of a price. So many others. The people that have paid the ultimate price are the ones who's no longer taken a breath. The people that have been killed as a result of this, and this is what it is. They have murdered Australians with this agenda. They have murdered Australians, and you can't get any more plain than that.
All right, miscellaneous. Let's take it out.
Roger.
So,
good idea.
This is the one for the where did that saying come from files?
Mm-hmm.
Or in this case, where did that gesture come from? So I actually did some research of that and discovered I was wrong, because I would have told you up until then that was a gesture that stemmed from the Battle of Agincourt, which was England versus France. And at that battle, the weapon of mass destruction, the nuclear weapon of the day, was the English longbowmen, because they were very skilled. They would be at the back of the infantry, the foot soldiers, and they would rain arrows over them onto their opponents at the other side. And you couldn't just give a longbow to anybody. It was like a lifetime skill. You had to be very physically fit and very skilled to use one. So they were a powerful weapon. They were the special forces, if you like. And before the battle, the French, I believe the French made it known that any English longbowmen who were captured would have their bow fingers cut off. And as a result of which, the English longbowmen taunted the French before the battle and said, "Come and take our fingers." That apparently is apocryphal. It may have happened, but it was not the genesis. Do you like all these biblical terms that I'm up with lately?
I'm loving it. That
Bruce. Was the genesis of the idea. And in fact, it goes back well before. And apparently this was a Greek and then a Roman thing. And in fact, the symbol was meant to be a phallic symbol, which was equivalent to flashing your genitals in contempt. So both good stories, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like giving the middle finger. I like it.
Yes, it's called flipping the bird is what the Americans call it.
Bird flip, yep, flipping the flip the bird. That's a nice little bit of history there.
Yeah, well, like I say, I was wrong, and it goes back much, much earlier. And to take us out with a couple of other things that are wrong, a couple of Muslims. So in the climate change and files, so the first one is here. So the Climate Change Authority, whoever they are, says climate change will force up interest rates by increasing climate disasters. So climate change and interest rates. So here's what they said. We're talking about household incomes potentially 20% lower than the status quo, persistent inflation and rising interest rates. That sounds like a Labor government before you even worry about the climate. Driven not by policy mistakes, but by floods, fires, and other disasters made worse by climate change. Now, one comment on that, they're talking about household incomes dropping 20%. Now, I've shown you a graph previously that shows national GDP is a straight line correlation with energy consumption, whether it's electricity or oil. If you want a bigger economy, you burn that much more electricity or oil. It's a straight line. And if you're wondering why, it's because energy is a marker for work done. And work, makes things, constructs things, moves things. So that's the reason for that.
Yep.
And of course, our wise rulers have chosen to make our energy less reliable and more expensive. So that alone is going to make our household incomes go down. We are going to be poorer because we can't use as much energy. And that's what they want. That's what they want for it. That's what they want. Just a little taunt of my own to the green people. Again, it's the middle of the year, and in the middle of each year, I change the oil in all of my farm engines, small engines. So things like and pumps and whippersnippers and stuff like that. And so I changed the oil in all of my small engines. Guess how many small engines I happen to have?
I'd hazard a guess, maybe, I don't know, 15?
14.
Oh,
so I've got 14 pumps, generators, post hole diggers, etc., etc. And that doesn't include the large small engines, the tractor, the bike, the gopher, etc. That's just the little things, the cage engines. So each one of those got a beautiful, delicious cup of golden orange dinosaur blood poured into its sump.
Yep.
Whether it needed it or not.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, that's still less than probably one wind turbine would take, Bruce.
800 litres in a wind turbine, so you're quite right. Of course, they don't have to change the oil in wind turbines because they just burn them and start again.
Boom tish.
All right.
Can't believe that little snort too, mate.
There we go. The Climate Change Authority says that we're going to have to pay higher interest rates because of climate change. So who are the Climate Change Authority? Well, they're basically the government. So they're quasi-government independent body, like APRA and all those. So the government sets up all of these quasi-government bodies, which allows them to sort of distance themselves from expert advice, which then tells the government what they wanted to know anyway, because your quasi-government body doesn't get paid unless they, do the work the government wants.
Of course.
So here's what it says about them. So the authority is an independent statutory body established under the Climate Change Authority to provide expert advice to the Australian government on climate change policy. Okay, so they're not independent. They're there to tell the government what they want to know about climate change. The authority plays an important role in the governance of Australia's climate change mitigation policies. Yeah, so they're not super independent, Mark's what I'm saying. Anyhow, apparently they're not basing that on data because this is the data. This is the actual, what they call normalised, in other words, adjusted for inflation, disaster losses in Australia over the last 60 years. So after adjusting for inflation, and I might say likely inadequately so, because as you know, inflation is probably twice as high as the government admits. But even if you use the government number, if you knock off, those outlying years, there's no trend at all. And in fact, if there is a trend, it's downwards. And if you accept the fact that they're only half adjusting for inflation, because, like I say, the government lies about inflation, almost certainly the insured losses are going down. So based on this, the Climate Change Authority is predicting doom and gloom in the future.
Of course they are.
Of course they are. Well, that's what they're paid to do. Sorry, they're paid to advise the government on climate change policy.
Yeah.
And it also looks like climate change is going to force up healthcare costs as well, because this story from repeat offender The Guardian is telling us that experts, once again experts, from the WHO, so that's a double.
Wow, they've really wheeled them out.
They now fear that snakebite numbers are going to go up, according to an expert study. Now, unfortunately, they also didn't rely on the data for that, because this is a graph of worldwide snake fatality numbers over the last 30 years or so. And there's error bands there. That's why there's the wide things. But you've basically got two lines. They're the actual numbers, and they've both been going downwards, and they're down about 40% in the last 30 years. So apparently the climate change increasing snake bites thing is not yet kicked off, but it's about to, I guess. We're doomed, Mark. There's no way out of this. Every way you turn, your house is going to get burned down. You're going to get bitten by a snake, and your interest rates will go up.
Well, that's all a given, Bruce, because that's how catastrophizing goes, isn't it? Keep the plebs living in fear, and they need to rely on the government, Bruce. So that's just how the model has been rolled out. It's all for the greater good, don't you know, Bruce? That's what it's all about.
Yes, they want to keep us scared. Exactly right.
Well, does that mean the Queenslanders could be in trouble? Because couldn't climate change going to increase cane toad numbers as well? Or like, what is that a likelihood as well? You reckon, Bruce?
Don't get us started. Now, as you said, the fear campaign. I'm going to bring up another. Ooh, I'm going to see if I can bring up another page.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I can't. Can you give me a screen?
Yeah, that's easy. I'll just stop sharing and probably drop off one of your video ones. You've got a video one open still too. So.
Oh, do I? Yeah.
You got the two. Yeah, you're getting a bit greedy. You've got 3 screen shares here. Like I've only just got one. That's okay.
I just you know what happens always when I try and.
You haven't knocked yourself off yet, so but I better not speak too.
I've just been a little bit careful here, so
better not speak too soon, Bruce. Better not speak too soon. That's all by design, though. Yeah, you haven't knocked me off yet.
That gives me what I wanted.
Yeah, so
okay.
this
You
is
mentioned about keeping the people scared.
Yeah, Mr. Mencken.
H.L. Mencken can have a run. The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins, all of which are imaginary.
Yep, seems to be what we're going through, Bruce, doesn't it? It just constantly, this is what they roll out all the time. So they roll it out all the time. And this, this is a big thing though, isn't it? The only way these people can get away with this is because they control the medium of the way the information gets to the masses. So not people watching this show and other alternative media, they're aware and awake. But the problem we still have, Bruce, is the majority of Australians are still tuned in to the hypnotizing of the mainstream media, the news, the Murdoch news, the 7, the 10, the ABCs, the SBSs. And because the same people likely control all that, that's why they continue to get away with what they can, because people are so sucked into that.
Until at some point they get hit with the clue bat.
Well, let's hope so. Well,
yeah.
Obviously not our audience. Our audience has obviously picked up the clue bat a long time ago. They understand. So that's why they're watching, and they keep tuning into you, brother, because you bring amazing content every week. You're well researched. You spend hours putting all this together for the community. So not only do I much appreciate everything you're doing, I'm pretty sure the audience does as well, mate. So thank you again, my brother, for another great week of information.
Shall we do it next week?
I think so. Shall we go 1-1-0 and then decide where we go from there?
Oh, how did the poll go?
I didn't put a poll up this week. I was embarrassed just in case people woke up.
No, you did one last week about whether. Remember, I said that you've done that's a pilot study. There were 3 people who were happy for you to remain, but I said that's a pilot study.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
What were the final results?
It stopped at the 3 because I didn't have it up long enough. Because I think the annoying thing is you have to have it up the whole time, and then make reference to it to keep reminding people to fill out there. So we'll have to maybe educate, and we'll do one show where we actually kind of say here's the poll, fill it out, put a number 1, 2, or 3 or whatever on there, and go from there. I'm pretty
So you
sure
got ratioed in the comments, and then you close the comment section just like the Advertiser newspaper does.
Yeah, no, none of that happens. I do admit though, I cannot possibly put every comment up of the stream between X, the 2 Rumbles, and YouTube. The comments that come in. So I do apologize to people that I don't put up because it will just distract too much from Bruce's delivering of his content. So yeah, but we do appreciate all the amazing content, the amazing comments, and your following, and a lot of the times you guys are interacting with each other there on the chats anyway, which is all good. So, but anyway, God bless you all. Hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you all next week to do it all again. And maybe we should do a poll to see whether people think we should hang up our hats, Bruce. I don't know. Should we do one of those maybe?
I might rig that poll if we get it. It'd be good to have a break.
you know, there's no compulsion on me. You can have a break anytime. You know that. It's only how hard you are on yourself, brother. But anyway, God bless. Have a great one. Good on you guys. Thanks, everybody.
To fight again for that already burned, he was driven towards the flames. All the signs are there for all to see, the signs we've lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains and turn our hearts away, like a silent choir too scared to sing the anthem of a braver day. A song our children may never hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix. A song our children may never hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.